Okay, so get this. We're diving into Unbreakable to unravel the mystery behind Cynthia Modron Conway, an 18-year-old girl who's
Hmm.
also the embodiment of a Celtic autumn deity. It's wild, right?
Teenager with the power of a goddess.
Yeah, we've got character excerpts, power breakdowns, the whole nine yards, all from the Unbreakable universe.
It's not your typical superhero story.
Right, like, is she a hero? A force of nature?
Or ticking time bomb.
Maybe all three. So let's find out.
What gets me is
Yeah.
how they blend the ordinary with the extraordinary. We've got high school drama,
Hmm.
but then bam, ancient power. It's not your typical teenage angst.
Yeah, you've got this girl who could be worrying about prom dates, but also grappling with, the wisdom and might of an actual goddess. So first things first, who is this Modron? And how does being infused with her essence play out in Cynthia's everyday life?
So Modron in Celtic mythology, she's a mother goddess. Think fertility, abundance, the cycles of nature.
Okay, all that good stuff.
Right, so it makes sense that Cynthia has this mastery over agriculture, like a superpowered green thumb. And she has a deep knowledge of ancient lore.
So it's like having a direct line to an encyclopedia of nature's secrets.
Exactly.
But it's not all sunshine and roses, right?
Right.
Her powers seem to have a bit of a temperamental side.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
We're talking two distinct sets of abilities, almost like flipping a switch.
And that switch is...
Cynthia's emotional state.
Okay, so let's unpack this whole moody goddess situation. The profile mentions something called autumn inducement. Does that mean she can just, make it fall whenever she wants?
It's more subtle than that, but equally impressive. Think of it like a ripple effect. When Cynthia's upset, the world around her reacts. Maybe the temperature drops suddenly, leaves change color out of season. You just feel this autumnal chill.
Wow.
It's like nature itself is mirroring her mood.
So it's not just a power she consciously wields, it's almost instinctual.
Yeah.
That's both terrifying and kind of awesome. What other abilities kick in when she's in this?
Mm-hmm.
What are we calling it?
Autumn mode.
Yeah, autumn mode.
So in autumn mode, that's where things get really interesting. We're talking weather manipulation,
Yeah.
specifically elements tied to autumn. Imagine winds strong enough to toss a motorcycle around like a toy.
Ooh!
And then there's her control over lightning.
The profile even mentions cracking concrete with those lightning strikes. I would not want to be on her bad side during a thunderstorm.
Right. But it's not just about raw power, though. She has incredibly precise control, able to target within a specific range. It's strategic, almost like she's playing chess with the elements.
And think about the real-world implications. Imagine the havoc she could wreak on electrical systems.
Oh, absolutely.
Blackouts, fried circuits.
Total chaos.
Okay, and speaking of potential chaos, let's talk about plants.
Yeah.
Autumn Goddess is going to have some serious plant action, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So what can she do?
In autumn mode, her plant manipulation goes way beyond just making flowers bloom. We're talking wielding vines and branches, with enough force to grapple a motorcycle.
It's like weaponized botany. But are there limits? Like, she can't just create a giant triffid and let it loose on the city, right?
No mutant plants, thankfully. It's more about manipulating what's already there,
Yeah.
using existing plants in creative
Yeah.
and often very intimidating ways.
So like a master sculptor, but instead of clay, she's using trees and vines.
Yeah, a very powerful sculpture.
Still pretty impressive. But I'm guessing a delicate rose isn't as durable as, say, a giant oak tree in her hands.
You're right. There's a spectrum of durability depending on the plant type.
So it's like choosing the right tool for the job, only her tools are rooted in nature.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's Cynthia when she's, let's say, not having the best day. But what about when she's in a more peaceful, neutral state? Does she become a total pacifist? Like all Zen vibes and flower power?
Not quite. It's more like her abilities shift from a fence to a more passive supportive role. And here's the interesting thing. In this state, she loses access to those more destructive autumn mode powers.
So it's like a trade-off. Okay, I'm intrigued. What kind of abilities does she have in this calmer state? Anything as flashy as lightning strikes?
Well, not as visually dramatic, but equally fascinating. She's got basic sorcery, nature empathy, fertility manipulation, a more gentle form of plant manipulation, and then there's this unique healing ability called preservation.
Hold on, break that down for me. Basic sorcery. What does that even mean for Cynthia?
It's more like a foundational knowledge of magic and arcane arts. Think of it as a skill set passed down through her community, probably intertwined with their reverence for Modron.
And so she does have specific spells.
Yes, each with its own unique application.
Okay, spill the magical tea. What kind of spells are we talking?
The profile mentions 3. Rith, Sibrides Gwent, and Dylan Disclair.
Okay. And how does she activate them?
She activates them by chanting the spell name while writing the corresponding runes.
Oh, like a mystical code.
Exactly.
All right, I'm hooked. Tell me more about these spells. Rith
Yeah.
first. What's the deal with that one?
Rith is all about illusion. It conjures a massive swarm of butterflies.
Butterflies.
Yeah, it can create a diversion, conceal something,
Mm.
or just add a touch of magical flair.
Ooh, clever. What about Sibrud y Gwent? That name sounds intense.
This one's about enhanced hearing. Cynthia writes the runes on her own body, and it allows her to hear distant sounds carried by the wind.
Wow. So she can eavesdrop on conversations happening blocks away.
Exactly.
So she's like a walking, talking spy gadget.
But there's a catch. While using this spell, her other senses are numbed.
Oh, so it makes her vulnerable in other ways.
Right. High risk, high reward.
Got it. Now on to the last one, Dealan Disclare. Is it as straightforward as it sounds?
Pretty much. Think of it as a nature-powered light show. Leaves or small objects around her start to glow, illuminating her surroundings.
Practical and elegant, just like nature itself.
Exactly.
Okay, 3 spells down. But what about those other abilities you mentioned? Nature, empathy, fertility, manipulation, that kind of thing. Those sound pretty potent too.
Oh, they are. With nature empathy, she's basically plugged into the natural world. She can sense the land, communicate with plants and animals.
It's like a level of connection most people can only dream of.
Right.
And then there's fertility manipulation. So does that mean she can just make plants grow super fast, like something out of a time-lapse video?
It's more about influencing the land's natural fertility. She can bless the soil for bountiful harvests, or do the opposite, make the land barren.
So it really emphasizes that cyclical aspect of nature, the balance between growth and decay.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about power. It's like having the ultimate control over the circle of life. What about that gentler form of plant manipulation you mentioned? How's that different from her autumn mode abilities?
In this calmer state, she can encourage plants to grow or bloom around her, but she can't weaponize them like she can when she's upset.
So it's less entanglement and more flower arranging.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we've covered most of her passive abilities, but there's one more that really piques my curiosity. Preservation. It sounds like her most intriguing power yet.
It really is. Preservation is a unique healing ability. Cynthia can choose to ease pain and promote healing. In plants, animals, even humans around her.
So she can mend wounds, soothe aches, even help with broken bones.
It's like a gentle, restorative touch from nature itself.
That's pretty awesome. But hold on, you said earlier that in this passive state, her autumn mode powers are locked out. Does that include preservation?
It does. When those autumn mode powers kick in, she loses access to preservation.
It's like a trade-off.
Right, she becomes capable of incredible destruction, but loses her ability to heal and protect.
That's a tough choice. It makes you wonder about the cost of her powers, not just physically, but emotionally as well. Okay, we've explored Cynthia's powers in both her autumn mode and her calmer state. But powers aren't everything, right? What about the woman behind the abilities? How does wielding this incredible power shape her personality?
That's where things get really complex. Remember, her worldview is shaped by this understanding of inevitable decay and rebirth. She sees beauty in the withering leaves, the cycle of life and death.
It's a pretty unique perspective.
Yeah, it's a melancholic perspective.
Yeah.
But there's also a quiet strength in her acceptance of it all.
So she's not exactly the life of the party.
Not exactly. The profile describes her as introspective, drawn to solitude, finding solace in contemplating the transient nature of life.
It's a perspective that's both wise and a little bit melancholy.
Right.
I can see how that introspective nature might clash with the intense power she wields when provoked.
Oh, definitely.
Imagine feeling the pull of ancient power while trying to navigate the mundane realities of high school.
It's like having a hurricane brewing inside you, while everyone else is worried about homework and football games.
It must be a constant internal struggle.
It is. On one hand, she has this incredible power,
Yeah.
but on the other, she's drawn to quiet contemplation acceptance.
It's this duality that makes her such a compelling character.
Absolutely.
Okay, now I'm dying to know how this all began. How did this seemingly ordinary girl end up with the essence of an autumn goddess dwelling inside her? Give me the backstory.
It all goes back to an arcane ritual performed during her birth. Her community, deeply connected to the seasons, they wanted to invoke the goddess Modron.
Right.
to ensure bountiful harvests for their village.
So they basically chose Cynthia as the conduit for this powerful magic.
Yeah, good.
So they were hoping for a good harvest, and instead they got a goddess-infused human. Talk about exceeding expectations.
Right.
But seriously, imagine being marked from birth with this incredible destiny.
Yeah,
It's a lot to handle for an 18-year-old.
it is. Being chosen as Modron's vessel isn't just an honor, it's a burden.
Right. Does she resent the ritual that bound her to this destiny? Does she yearn for a normal life free from the weight of these powers?
Or maybe she embraces it, seeing it as a gift, a chance to make a real difference in the world.
It's this potential for conflict, for internal struggle, that really makes Cynthia's story so captivating.
Yeah.
It's not just about superpowers, it's about the human cost, the choices we make when faced with extraordinary circumstances. Okay, so we've talked about her powers, her personality, her backstory. But Cynthia is more than just a collection of abilities and origin stories. She's got skills, weaknesses, just like anyone else, right?
Absolutely.
What else is hidden in her profile?
And it's interesting how some of her skills seem to be directly influenced by her connection to the goddess. For example, she's a natural leader respected in her community.
Makes sense.
She's also a gifted storyteller, especially when it comes to mythology and ancient lore.
So it's like the goddess's essence is shaping her,
Yeah.
guiding her towards a specific path, even if she's not fully aware of it.
Right.
And of course, she has extensive agricultural knowledge, which makes sense given Modron's connection to the harvest.
Exactly.
But what about weaknesses? Everyone has an Achilles heel, right? What makes Cynthia vulnerable?
Well, she is still human after all. She's vulnerable to physical attacks, and her passive state leaves her open to sneak attacks, especially when those more aggressive autumn mode powers are dormant.
It's a reminder that even with these incredible abilities, she's not invincible. But there's one weakness that really stands out.
Oh, yeah.
Let me guess. It has something to do with her being a conduit to the divine. Like if you mess with a goddess, you mess with Cynthia.
Exactly. She's incredibly susceptible to magic, especially spells or curses directed at Modron.
It's like her link to the divine is both a source of immense power and a potential vulnerability.
Right.
And to top it all off, she attracts dark, otherworldly beings. Hold on, what
Sort of
are...
like a beacon is shining on her saying, hey, supernatural baddies, come and get me.
She's a magnet for monsters. That's terrifying.
It definitely adds a layer of suspense to her story.
But also kind of badass.
Yeah.
Knowing she attracts these dangerous entities, will she proactively seek them out to protect others? Or will she wait to be found, potentially putting her community at risk?
Right, is a constant threat looming over her, adding to that sense of internal conflict we were talking about earlier.
And what about the emotional toll? Imagine constantly looking over your shoulder, knowing that something sinister could be lurking around every corner.
Yeah, it speaks to the psychological burden she carries.
It's not just about mastering her powers. It's about navigating this constant threat and the responsibility of protecting those she cares about.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered powers, personality, backstory, weaknesses, even monster magnets. But there's one last detail that's been bugging me. Season splitter. What's the story with this mysterious sword? Is it just a fancy accessory, or is there something more to it?
Season Splitter is described as a beautifully crafted sword, intricately carved with runes. It's clearly a significant object for Cynthia, but the profile is pretty vague about its origins and powers.
It's like Chekhov's gun just waiting to be fired.
Exactly.
Is it a conduit for her powers? A key to unlocking some hidden potential? Or maybe it's a weapon specifically designed to combat those dark entities she attracts?
The possibilities are endless.
It's like the writers are dangling this powerful artifact in front of us, daring us to speculate. It's
Right.
that sense of mystery, that what's going to happen next feeling,
Yeah.
that keeps us hooked on stories like Unbreakable. We've uncovered so much about Cynthia, but there are still so many questions left unanswered.
It's like we've only just begun to scratch the surface.
Okay, so we've laid out all the pieces of the puzzle. Cynthia's powers, her personality, her backstory, even her weapon. But what does it all mean? How do these elements come together to create a compelling character? And more importantly, what role might she play in the larger world of Unbreakable?
That's the big question, isn't it? And I think it all comes back to Cynthia's unique worldview, shaped by her understanding of decay and rebirth. This isn't your typical superhero who punches their way to victory. She's a force of nature, but one who's intimately aware of life's fragility and the cyclical nature of existence.
So how will that worldview influence her actions?
Right. Will she be a proactive defender, striking down threats before they emerge? Or will she take a more passive approach, stepping in only when absolutely necessary?
It's like she's constantly wrestling with two opposing forces within herself, the destructive power of nature and the quiet wisdom of acceptance. How does someone reconcile those two extremes?
Exactly. And that struggle is what makes her decisions, her actions so compelling. Will she use her powers to dominate and control, or will she seek a more harmonious balance with the world around her?
And how will that impact her relationships with others?
Right.
Remember, she's not just a goddess-infused being. She's also a young woman trying to navigate the complexities of life, love, and friendship.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how she balances it all.
Yeah.
On one hand, she's this powerful force of nature, but on the other, she's just a teenager trying to figure things out.
It's what makes her so relatable, right? We've all felt those conflicting emotions, that sense of being pulled in different
Right,
directions.
but imagine having those internal struggles amplified by the power of a goddess.
It's like the stakes are constantly raised, the consequences magnified.
No.
But speaking of consequences, let's talk about that whole magnet for dark entities thing. How does that impact her relationships with others? Can she even have a normal life with that kind of danger looming over her?
That's a great question. Imagine trying to maintain friendships, go on dates, all while knowing you're a walking target for supernatural threats.
Right. It's like trying to keep a hurricane a secret while everyone else is enjoying the sunshine.
Exactly.
So does she push people away to protect them? Or does she confide in someone hoping they'll understand and accept her for who she is, darkness and all?
And if she does confide in someone, how will they react? Will they believe her, support her, or will they be terrified, rejecting the very part of her that makes her so unique?
It's a classic superhero dilemma, but with an unbreakable twist. It's not just about hiding a secret identity, it's about concealing a fundamental truth about who she is. And then there's the added layer of her autumn mode. Imagine trying to explain those transformations, those sudden shifts in mood and power, to someone you care about.
Talk about a relationship challenge.
Right.
But it also opens up the possibility for some incredibly powerful bonds, built on trust acceptance and a willingness to embrace the extraordinary.
So her relationships could be a source of strength, a support system in a world that constantly feels like it's trying to pull her apart.
Right, or they could become another source of conflict, a reminder of the sacrifices she's made, and the normalcy she may never fully experience.
And let's not forget the potential for betrayal. What if someone close to her tries to exploit her powers for their own gain? Or worse, what if they try to manipulate her, using her connection to the goddess against her?
That's a terrifying thought. Imagine the ultimate betrayal, having the very essence of who you are turned against you.
It's a reminder that with great power comes not only great responsibility, but also great vulnerability.
Exactly.
It raises the stakes even higher. It's not just about mastering her powers and protecting others, it's about protecting herself, safeguarding her own autonomy, her right to choose how and when to wield that power.
Right, and it makes her story that much more compelling. We're not just rooting for a superhero, we're rooting for a young woman fighting for her right to exist on her own terms, to define her own identity in a world that's constantly trying to define her.
So how will Cynthia's story unfold? Will she embrace her role as a protector, using her powers to fight for those who can't fight for themselves? Will she succumb to the darkness that seems to surround her? Or will she forge a new path, one that honors both her humanity and her divine connection?
The possibilities are endless. And that's what makes Cynthia Modron Conway such a fascinating character. She's a walking paradox,
Yeah.
a force of nature grappling with her own mortality, a young woman burdened with a destiny that could shape the fate of the world.
It's been an incredible deep dive, and I feel like we've only scratched the surface of who Cynthia is and what she's capable of.
It's true.
It's a testament to the power of good storytelling, the ability to create characters that stay with us long after the story is over.
Absolutely. And the Unbreakable universe excels at that, leaving us with lingering questions, sparking our imaginations, and making us eager to see what happens next.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the character of Cynthia Modron Conway, we want to leave you with one final thought. Knowing what you now know about her powers, her personality, and her destiny, how would you choose to wield the essence of an autumn goddess?
Would you embrace the raw power of autumn mode, even if it meant sacrificing your compassion and empathy? Would you seek balance, striving for harmony, even in the face of darkness? Or would you forge a path entirely your own?
The choice is yours, and that's the beauty of it. The Unbreakable universe invites us to explore these complex questions, to grapple with the ethical dilemmas, and to define our own understanding of heroism, sacrifice, and the true meaning of being unbreakable.
So keep exploring, Delve deeper into Celtic mythology, dive back into the world of Unbreakable, and let your imagination run wild. Because in a world where anything is possible, the only limit is your own curiosity and the depths of your imagination.